Homeless dog guards pregnant woman. What happens next will stun you. How will this story unfold? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The sun was setting over a bustling cityscape, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Among the shadows cast by tall buildings, a lone dog meandered through the crowded streets. His golden fur was matted, his ribs visible beneath his coat, and his eyes held a mixture of exhaustion and resilience. This was Max, a stray who had learned the art of survival in a world that often ignored him. Max's routine usually involved scouring alleys for scraps of food, dodging aggressive humans, and seeking shelter from the cold. But tonight was different. As he padded past a park, his ears pricked at an unfamiliar sound, a soft whimper that tugged at his instincts. Curiosity piqued, Max followed the sound, weaving through the trees until he reached a cluster of tents set up near a playground. The source of the sound was a woman, her face pale and strained. She sat on a tattered blanket, her arms wrapped protectively around her swollen belly. Her eyes darted nervously, scanning her surroundings as if searching for something or someone. Max tilted his head, watching her from a distance. Something about her vulnerability struck a chord deep within him. The woman's name was Elena, and her story was one of hardship and determination. Just a month ago, she had been living in a small apartment, preparing for the arrival of her first child. But life had a way of turning plans upside down. A series of unfortunate events, a job loss, an unsympathetic landlord, and mounting medical bills had left her without a home. With nowhere else to go, she had found herself at this makeshift encampment, surrounded by strangers but feeling utterly alone. Elena clutched her belly as another wave of discomfort washed over her. The baby was due in a few weeks, but the stress and harsh conditions were taking their toll. She whispered a prayer, her voice barely audible. "Please, just let us get through this." Max took a cautious step closer, his nose twitching as he sniffed the air. Elena noticed him and froze, her hand instinctively moving to shield her belly. But instead of growling or barking, Max sat down a few feet away, his tail wagging gently. He tilted his head as if to say, "I mean no harm." Over the next few hours, Max remained near Elena, watching over her like a silent guardian. Whenever someone approached her tent, he would growl softly, his presence enough to deter any potential troublemakers. Elena couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel entirely alone. That night, as the temperatures dropped, Max curled up outside her tent, his body forming a barrier against the cold. Elena peered out, her heart softening at the sight of him. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with gratitude. The days that followed saw an unlikely bond forming between the two. Elena shared what little food she had with Max, and in return, he became her steadfast protector. He accompanied her on trips to the local soup kitchen, his watchful eyes scanning the crowd for any signs of danger. At night, he stood guard, ensuring she could sleep without fear. Word of their unusual partnership began to spread among the other residents of the encampment. Some scoffed, dismissing Max as just another stray. But others saw the loyalty in his eyes and the way he never left Elena's side. "That dog's got more heart than most people," an older man remarked one evening. One rainy afternoon, as Elena sat beneath a makeshift tarp, her contractions began. Panic set in as she realized the baby was coming early. Her breathing quickened and tears streamed down her face. "Not now," she pleaded. "Please, not here." Max sensed her distress immediately. He barked loudly, drawing the attention of a nearby volunteer who had been distributing blankets. The young woman rushed over, her face filled with concern. "Are you okay? What's wrong?" "It's the baby," Elena gasped. "I think it's coming." The volunteer acted quickly, calling for an ambulance. Max barked again, as if urging the paramedics to hurry. When the ambulance arrived, he refused to leave Elena's side, even as the medics tried to shoo him away. "Looks like he's coming with us," one of them said with a chuckle. The ride to the hospital was a blur for Elena, her pain overshadowing everything else. But through it all, Max stayed close, his presence a constant source of comfort. When they arrived, hospital staff tried to separate him from Elena, but she clung to his collar, her voice firm despite her agony. "He stays." Reluctantly, they allowed Max to accompany her to a private room, where he lay quietly in the corner, his eyes never leaving her. Hours later, after a challenging delivery, Elena gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She named her Hope, a testament to the resilience and strength that had carried them through. Max's loyalty didn't go unnoticed by the hospital staff. Nurses and doctors marveled at his behavior, noting how he seemed to understand exactly what Elena needed. One nurse even brought him a bowl of food and water, her smile warm as she watched him wag his tail in gratitude. As Elena cradled her newborn, tears streamed down her face. "We couldn't have done this without you," she said, reaching out to stroke Max's fur. He leaned into her touch, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. The story of Elena and Max soon reached the local news. Reporters flocked to the hospital, eager to capture the heartwarming tale of a homeless dog who had become a hero. Donations poured in from strangers who were moved by their story, offering Elena the support she needed to start a new chapter in her life. With the help of a local shelter, Elena found temporary housing where she could care for Hope in a safe and stable environment. And, of course, Max came with them, his place in their little family solidified. In the months that followed, Elena worked tirelessly to rebuild her life. She enrolled in job training programs, attended parenting classes, and saved every penny she could. Through it all, Max remained by her side, his presence a source of comfort and motivation. One sunny afternoon, as Elena watched Hope take her first steps, she felt a surge of gratitude. She knelt beside Max, wrapping her arms around him. "We're going to be okay," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "Because we have each other." Max wagged his tail, his eyes shining with love. For the first time in his life, he knew what it meant to have a family, a bond that could weather any storm. As weeks turned into months, Elena and Max settled into their new lives. The small apartment provided by the shelter was modest but warm, a place where Elena could focus on raising Hope and rebuilding their future. Max quickly adapted to his new surroundings, his tail wagging with joy each time Elena returned home from a long day of job training. Hope, now a few months old, was a source of endless happiness for both Elena and Max. The bond between the baby and the dog grew stronger each day. Max would lie beside Hope's crib, his ears perking up at the slightest sound. When Hope cried, Max would gently nudge Elena, his soft whimpers urging her to check on the baby. Elena often found herself marveling at Max's instincts. "You're like a second parent to her," she joked one evening, scratching behind his ears. Max's eyes seemed to sparkle with pride, as if he understood every word. One chilly autumn morning, Elena decided to take Hope and Max for a walk in the park. The leaves had turned vibrant shades of red and gold, carpeting the ground in a sea of color. Hope giggled from her stroller, her tiny hands reaching out to catch the falling leaves. Max trotted beside them, his nose twitching as he took in the crisp air. The park was bustling with families, joggers, and dog walkers. Elena felt a pang of envy as she watched other parents laughing and playing with their children. But she quickly pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the blessings in her life. She had Hope, she had Max, and she had a second chance. As they strolled along the winding path, a young boy approached them, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Is that your dog?" he asked, pointing at Max. Elena smiled. "Yes, his name is Mac." The boy crouched down, extending his hand cautiously. Max sniffed it before giving a gentle lick, earning a delighted laugh. "He's cool," the boy said, glancing up at Elena. "You're lucky." "I am," Elena replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. "He's a hero." Word of Max's loyalty continued to spread throughout the community. People who had read about their story in the news would often stop Elena on the street to express their admiration. Some offered donations, while others simply wanted to pet Max and hear more about his remarkable journey. One day, Elena received an invitation from a local animal shelter to attend a charity event. The shelter wanted to honor Max as a symbol of loyalty and resilience, hoping his story would inspire others to adopt homeless animals. Elena was touched by the gesture and agreed to attend. The event was held in a large park, with booths, games, and activities for families and their pets. Max quickly became the star of the show, his wagging tail and gentle demeanor winning over everyone he met. Elena shared their story on stage, her voice trembling with emotion as she recounted how Max had come into her life and changed it forever. By the end of the day, the shelter had raised a significant amount of money, and several animals had found new homes. Elena couldn't help but feel proud. Max's story had not only transformed her life, but it also made a difference in the lives of others. As winter approached, life continued to improve for Elena and Hope. With the help of the shelter, Elena secured a part-time job at a local cafe, where she quickly became known for her friendly smile and hardworking attitude. The regular customers took an interest in her story, often leaving generous tips or offering words of encouragement. Max became a fixture at the cafe as well, lounging by the entrance while Elena worked. Customers would stop to pet him or sneak him treats, earning a wag of his tail. Hope, bundled up in her stroller, would watch from her spot by the counter, her laughter filling the cafe. One evening, as they walked home together, Elena paused to take in the city lights. The glow of the street lamps reflected in her eyes, a reminder of how far they had come. She knelt beside Max, wrapping her arms around him. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, "because we have each other." But life, as Elena had learned, was rarely without its challenges. One particularly cold night, as a snowstorm raged outside, Max began to grow restless. He paced by the door, his ears twitching at every sound. Elena watched him with concern. "What's wrong, boy?" she asked, but Max only whined in response. Suddenly, there was a loud knock at the door. Elena's heart raced as she opened it to find a young woman standing on the porch, her face pale and her clothes soaked through. "Please," the woman gasped. "I need help." Without hesitation, Elena invited her inside, offering a blanket and a cup of hot tea. The woman, whose name was Maria, explained that her car had broken down in the storm and she had been walking for hours in search of shelter. Max sat by Maria's side, his presence calming her frayed nerves. As the storm raged on, Elena and Maria talked late into the night. Maria shared her struggles, and Elena found herself relating to her story in many ways. By the time the storm subsided, a bond had formed between the two women, one built on shared experiences and mutual support. Maria's visit proved to be a turning point for Elena. Inspired by their conversation, she began volunteering at a local women's shelter, using her own experiences to help others in need. Max, of course, came along, quickly becoming a favorite among the shelter's residents. His presence brought comfort and joy to those who were struggling, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there was hope. Elena's work at the shelter gave her a renewed sense of purpose. She found herself becoming an advocate for homeless families and animals, sharing her story at events and rallies. Max's fame only grew, his story serving as a powerful example of the resilience and compassion that could be found in unexpected places. As the years passed, Elena, Hope, and Max built a life filled with love and purpose. Hope grew into a spirited and curious child, her laughter a constant source of joy. Max, now older and grayer, remained as loyal as ever, his bond with Elena and Hope unshakable. On a sunny spring afternoon, as they played in the park, Elena watched Hope chase after Max, her laughter ringing out like music. Tears filled Elena's eyes as she thought about how far they had come. "You're our guardian angel, Max," she whispered. "We wouldn't be here without you." Max, as if understanding her words, turned to look at her, his eyes filled with love. And in that moment, Elena knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. Max had become a fixture in the lives of everyone who crossed paths with him. His loyalty, kindness, and resilience were well known in the community, and his story continued to inspire countless people. Elena often reflected on how a stray dog had not only saved her, but also given her a reason to fight for a better life. One day, while volunteering at the women's shelter, Elena noticed a little girl staring shyly at Max from across the room. The girl, no older than 7, was clutching a worn stuffed animal and sitting quietly by herself. Max, ever sensitive to emotions, trotted over to her and sat down, his tail wagging gently. The girl hesitated for a moment before reaching out to pet him. A small smile spread across her face as Max leaned into her touch. Elena watched the interaction with a soft smile, her heart swelling with pride. Max had an incredible ability to bring comfort to those who needed it most. Later, Elena learned that the girl, named Sophia, had been staying at the shelter with her mother after escaping an abusive situation. Max's gentle presence had been the first thing to make Sophia smile in weeks. "He's a special dog," Sophia's mother told Elena, her voice filled with gratitude. "He gives people hope." Elena began bringing Max to the shelter more often, and he quickly became a source of joy for the residents. Children would gather around him, their laughter filling the air as he wagged his tail and licked their faces. Even the adults, who carried the weight of their struggles, found solace in his presence. Max seemed to understand their pain, offering quiet companionship without judgment. One evening, as Elena and Max walked home from the shelter, they passed a small group of teenagers hanging out on a street corner. The teens were laughing and joking, but something about their demeanor made Elena uneasy. She tightened her grip on Max's leash, her pace quickening. As they drew closer, one of the teens called out, "Hey, nice dog you've got there." Elena offered a polite smile, but didn't stop. Max, sensing her unease, walked closely by her side, his ears perked and his eyes alert. The teens didn't follow, but the encounter left Elena shaken. When they arrived home, she sat on the couch and pulled Max close. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she whispered, stroking his fur. Max licked her hand, his steady presence a reminder that she was never alone. The weeks turned into months, and life continued to improve for Elena and Hope. With the support of the shelter and the community, Elena was able to secure a full-time job at a local nonprofit organization that helped homeless families. The job was both challenging and rewarding, and Elena felt a deep sense of fulfillment in her work. Hope, now a lively toddler, was the light of Elena's life. She adored Max, often crawling onto his back and giggling as he gently carried her around the apartment. Max, ever patient, seemed to understand that Hope was the center of their little family. He watched over her with the same unwavering devotion he had shown from the start. One sunny afternoon, Elena decided to take Hope and Max to a nearby lake for a picnic. The lake was surrounded by lush greenery, and the water sparkled under the sunlight. It was a place where Elena felt at peace, a reminder of the beauty and simplicity of life. As they spread out a blanket on the grass, Max ran ahead, barking excitedly as he chased after a butterfly. Hope clapped her hands and squealed with delight, her laughter echoing across the water. Elena watched them with a smile, her heart full. As they enjoyed their picnic, an older couple approached them, their faces lit with curiosity. "Is this the famous Max we've heard so much about?" the woman asked, her eyes twinkling. Elena laughed. "Yes, this is Max." The couple sat down on the grass, and the man reached out to pet Max. "We saw your story on the news," he said. "What an incredible dog. He's an inspiration." Elena shared more about their journey, grateful for the opportunity to raise awareness about the challenges faced by homeless families and animals. The couple listened intently, their admiration for Max growing with each word. Before they left, the woman handed Elena an envelope. "This is for you and Max," she said with a warm smile. "Use it for whatever you need." Elena opened the envelope to find a generous donation inside. Tears filled her eyes as she thanked the couple, overwhelmed by their kindness. Max wagged his tail, as if sensing the significance of the moment. That evening, as they returned home, Elena reflected on the unexpected twists and turns her life had taken. She thought about how Max had entered her life at her lowest point, bringing with him a sense of hope and purpose. He had not only saved her, but had also given her the strength to keep going. Sitting on the couch with Hope at her lap and Max by her side, Elena felt a deep sense of gratitude. "We're a team," she said, her voice soft but firm. "And together, we can face anything." Max rested his head on her lap, his eyes filled with love. It was a moment of quiet contentment, a reminder of the bond that had carried them through the darkest times. One chilly morning, as Elena prepared to head to work, she noticed Max acting strangely. He paced by the door, his ears perked and his nose twitching. "What's wrong, boy?" she asked, but Max only barked softly, his gaze fixed on the door. Elena opened the door to find a young woman standing on the porch, her face pale and her eyes filled with worry. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman said, her voice trembling. "But I heard about Max, and I was hoping you could help me." The woman, whose name was Rachel, explained that she had recently rescued a stray dog but didn't know how to care for it. She had read about Max's story in the news and thought Elena might have some advice. Elena invited Rachel inside, offering her a cup of tea as they talked. Max, ever the friendly host, greeted Rachel with a wagging tail. Rachel's dog, a timid little terrier, peeked out from behind her legs, its eyes wide with uncertainty. Elena knelt down and extended her hand. "It's okay, sweetie," she said gently. The dog sniffed her hand before tentatively stepping closer. Max joined in, his calm demeanor helping to put the little dog at ease. Over the next hour, Elena shared tips on caring for a rescue dog, drawing from her own experiences with Max. Rachel listened intently, her anxiety giving way to a sense of determination. By the time she left, she was smiling, her gratitude evident in her eyes. As Rachel walked away, her little terrier trotting beside her, Elena felt a sense of fulfillment. Max had not only changed her life, but was now helping her change the lives of others. It was a ripple effect of kindness and compassion, one that had started with a simple act of loyalty. The ripple effect Max had started became a powerful force in the community. News of his influence spread even further, inspiring more people to help those in need, both humans and animals alike. Max had become a symbol of loyalty, resilience, and the life-changing impact of second chances. Elena, now thriving in her full-time role at the nonprofit, often reflected on how her life had transformed, all because of one fateful encounter with a stray dog. One day, Elena was approached by her supervisor, Karen, at work. "Elena," Karen began with a smile, "we've been so impressed with your dedication and your story. We'd like to host an event to highlight your journey with Max and to raise awareness about the challenges faced by homeless families and rescue animals." Elena was taken aback but deeply touched. "I'd be honored," she replied, thinking of how Max's story could inspire even more people. The event, titled Pause for Hope, was set to take place at the local community center. It would feature a presentation by Elena, a meet and greet with Max, and a fundraiser to support the nonprofit and local animal shelters. The announcement quickly gained traction, with many community members expressing excitement about the opportunity to meet Max. As the event approached, Elena worked tirelessly to prepare her speech. She wanted to do justice to Max's story and to share the lessons she had learned through their journey. On the day of the event, the community center was packed with people, their faces lit with anticipation. Elena stood on stage, holding a microphone in one hand and Max's leash in the other. "Good evening, everyone," she began, her voice steady but emotional. "I want to start by thanking each and every one of you for being here tonight. This story isn't just about me. It's about resilience, love, and the incredible bond we share with our animals." She recounted her journey with Max, from their first encounter in the park to the life they had built together. The audience listened intently, many of them moved to tears by her words. Max sat beside her, his tail wagging gently as if to reassure her. "And here's what Max has taught me," Elena concluded, her voice breaking slightly. "Even in the darkest times, there's hope. And sometimes, that hope comes in the form of a wagging tail and a pair of loving eyes." The crowd erupted into applause, many standing to give Elena and Max a heartfelt ovation. Elena's chest swelled with pride and gratitude as she looked down at Max, who was now the center of attention as people lined up to meet him. The fundraiser was a massive success, raising more than double the initial goal. Several rescue animals were adopted that night, their new owners inspired by Max's story. Elena couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that their journey had made such a tangible impact. But the most unexpected moment of the night came when a man approached Elena, his eyes wide with recognition. "You're Elena, right?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Yes," Elena replied, a bit unsure. "I think you adopted Max after I gave him up," the man said, his voice cracking with emotion. He introduced himself as Paul and explained that he had been Max's original owner, but had been forced to give him up when he lost his home during a financial crisis. "I felt guilty every day since I let him go," Paul admitted, tears streaming down his face. "But seeing how much he's done for you and your family, it's like he was meant to find you." Elena felt a lump rise in her throat as she reached out to take Paul's hand. "Max saved me when I needed him most," she said gently. "And now I know he saved you too, in his own way." After the event, Elena and Paul stayed in touch. Paul began volunteering at the nonprofit and at local shelters, finding purpose and healing through his work. His bond with Max also grew, and Elena often invited him over to visit. Hope adored him, calling him Uncle Paul, and Max's tail wagged with delight whenever he saw his former owner. One sunny afternoon, Paul joined Elena, Hope, and Max for a walk in the park. As they strolled along the familiar paths, Paul turned to Elena. "I never thought losing Max could lead to something so beautiful," he said, his voice filled with emotion. Elena smiled. "Life is a funny way of working out," she replied. "Sometimes, the things we lose make room for something even greater." Meanwhile, Max continued to be a source of inspiration and joy for everyone he encountered. His story attracted the attention of a local journalist, who wrote a feature article about him and Elena. The article, titled "The Dog Who Saved a Family," was shared widely online, reaching people from all walks of life. One of those people was a young woman named Lily, who had been struggling with depression after losing her beloved dog. Lily reached out to Elena, sharing how Max's story had given her a renewed sense of hope. "It reminded me of the bond one had with my dog," she wrote, "and it made me realize that I can open my heart to another one." A few weeks later, Lily adopted a rescue dog named Charlie, a spirited Labrador mix who quickly became her closest companion. She sent Elena a photo of herself and Charlie, both of them smiling brightly. "Thank you for sharing Max's story," she wrote. "It changed my life." The connections Max fostered extended beyond the community. Elena was invited to speak at conferences and events, sharing her journey with Max and advocating for homeless families and animals. Each time, Max accompanied her, his calm and loving presence captivating everyone he met. One evening, after returning from a conference, Elena sat on the couch with Max, reflecting on how far they had come. "You've touched so many lives," she said, scratching behind his ears. "You're more than a dog, Max. You're a miracle." Max rested his head on her lap, his eyes closing as he let out a contented sigh. It was a moment of peace and gratitude, a reminder of the unbreakable bond they shared. But life, as always, had its challenges. One winter morning, Elena noticed that Max was moving more slowly than usual, his steps stiff and deliberate. Concerned, she took him to the vet, who diagnosed him with arthritis. The news was a blow, but Elena was determined to make Max's golden years as comfortable and joyful as possible. She adjusted their routine, ensuring that Max had plenty of rest and gentle exercise. She also made small modifications to their home, adding ramps and soft bedding to make it easier for him to move around. Hope, now a curious and empathetic child, took it upon herself to help care for Max, often sitting beside him and reading him stories. Despite his slowing pace, Max's spirit remained strong. He continued to accompany Elena to the shelter, offering his calming presence to those in need. He also maintained his role as Hope's protector, his watchful eyes never far from her as she played. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Elena looked into Max's eyes and felt a wave of emotion. "You've given us so much," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I hope you know how much you mean to us." Max licked her hand, his eyes filled with love and understanding. In that moment, Elena realized that their journey wasn't just about what Max had done for her. It was about what they had done for each other. Together, they had created a life filled with love, resilience, and hope. Winter deepened, and the days grew shorter, bringing with them an icy chill. Despite the cold, Max remained a steadfast presence in Elena and Hope's lives. His condition made it harder for him to keep up with long walks, but his determination to be by their side never wavered. Elena adjusted their outings to suit his pace, wrapping him in a cozy sweater and taking shorter strolls through the nearby park. One snowy afternoon, as they walked along the park's winding paths, Hope spotted a boy building a small snow fort. The boy looked up and smiled shyly at them. He appeared to be around her age, bundled in a puffy jacket and scarf, his cheeks rosy from the cold. Hope tugged on Elena's hand. "Can I play with him?" she asked eagerly. Elena nodded, smiling. "Of course, sweetie." Hope ran over to the boy, and within moments, the two were laughing and shaping snow into walls and towers. Max lay down nearby, his watchful eyes keeping an eye on the children as they played. Elena stood back, savoring the sight of Hope's carefree joy. The boy's mother approached Elena, her breath visible in the crisp air. "Hi, I'm Maria," she said warmly. "That's my son, Daniel." "Elena," she replied with a smile. "And this is Mac." Maria crouched down to pet Max, her expression softening as she took in his calm demeanor. "He's beautiful," she said. "You don't see many dogs like him these days, so loyal." Elena shared a bit of Max's story, and Maria listened intently. When she finished, Maria's eyes glistened with tears. "It's incredible what animals can do for us," she said. "My Daniel was so shy before we got our dog, Bella." She helped him come out of his shell. As the afternoon wore on, the children's laughter echoed through the park, blending with a muffled crunch of footsteps on snow. Max dozed contentedly, his body relaxed but his ears alert. The scene was one of simple, unspoken connection, a reminder of the small moments that made life beautiful. When it was time to go, Daniel gave Hope a high five and waved at Max. "Bye to Max," he called, his voice full of warmth. Elena and Maria exchanged numbers, promising to arrange another playdate soon. As they walked home, Hope chattered excitedly about her new friend, her words spilling out in a joyful stream. Back at home, Elena prepared hot cocoa for herself and Hope, while Max settled into his favorite spot by the fireplace. The warm glow of the flames danced across the room, casting shadows that flickered like whispers of past. Elena sat on the couch, her hands wrapped around a mug, and watched Hope play with her stuffed animals on the rug. Max is a hero, Mommy, Hope said suddenly, looking up with wide eyes. He's like a knight in shiny armor. Elena chuckled, her heart swelling with love. He is, isn't he? Our brave protector. Hope crawled over to Max, hugging him gently. Thank you, Max, she whispered. For everything. Max licked her cheek, his tail wagging slowly. It was a moment of pure, unfiltered love, a bond that needed no words to be understood. As winter turned to spring, the world outside began to bloom with new life. Elena took Max and Hope to the local farmer's market one sunny Saturday morning. The air was filled with the scent of fresh produce and baked goods, and the lively chatter of vendors and shoppers created a cheerful atmosphere. Max trotted beside Elena, his tail wagging as he sniffed the air. He received plenty of attention from passers-by, many of whom recognized him from the articles and events. Hope held Elena's hand, her eyes wide with wonder as she took in the colorful displays. At one stall, a woman was selling handmade dog accessories, collars, leashes, and sweaters adorned with intricate patterns. Hope spotted a bright red collar with a gold tag in the shape of a heart. Can we get that from Max, Mommy? She asked, her voice filled with excitement. Elena picked up the collar, smiling as she read the inscription on the tag, Forever Loved. It felt perfect for Max. She purchased the collar and knelt down to put it on him. Max wagged his tail, his eyes shining with gratitude. You're a star, Max, Elena said softly, scratching behind his ears. Our shining star. As they continued exploring the market, a man approached them, holding a camera. Excuse me, he said, smiling. I'm a freelance photographer, and I'd love to take a picture of Max. He's quite the celebrity around here. Elena hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Sure, as long as it's okay with Mac. The man crouched down, holding out a treat. Max wagged his tail and posed obediently, his calm demeanor making him a natural in front of the camera. The man snapped a few photos and showed them to Elena, who was impressed by the way he had captured Max's spirit. These are beautiful, she said. Thank you. The man handed her a business card. I'll send you copies, he said. And if you ever need professional photos, let me know. Elena thanked him and tucked the card into her pocket. The encounter was a reminder of how far they had come and how Max's story continued to touch lives in unexpected ways. That evening, as the sun set in hues of gold and pink, Elena sat on the porch with Max. Hope was inside, playing with her toys, her laughter drifting through the open window. The air was warm and fragrant, carrying the promise of a new season. Elena looked out at the horizon, her thoughts drifting. She thought about the journey they had taken together, the challenges they had faced, the people they had met, and the lives they had touched. Through it all, Max had been her anchor, her constant source of strength and love. You've given me so much, Max, she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. Max leaned against her, his body warm and solid. It was his way of saying that no repayment was needed, that their bond was enough. As the first stars began to twinkle in the sky, Elena felt a profound sense of peace. She knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, stronger, braver, and more connected than ever. As summer approached, the days grew longer and warmer, filling Elena's life with a renewed sense of energy and hope. Max, despite his arthritis, seemed to be thriving. His spirit was unbreakable, and every wag of his tail reminded Elena of the strength they had found together. One morning, Elena woke up to find Hope sitting beside Max on the living room floor, drawing pictures with her crayons. She held up a piece of paper, smiling proudly. Look, Mommy, it's me and Mac. Elena took the drawing, heart swelling as she looked at the colorful depiction of Hope and Max standing side by side under a bright sun. It's beautiful, sweetheart, she said. Max will love it. Hope placed the drawing in front of Max, who sniffed it and wagged his tail as if to give his seal of approval. I want to make lots more, Hope declared. One for every happy day we've had with Mac. Later that day, Elena decided to take Max and Hope to the beach. It had been a long time since they'd gone, and she thought the fresh sea air and soft sand might be good for Max. They packed a small picnic and set off, the excitement in Hope's voice making the journey feel even more special. When they arrived, the beach was a picture of tranquility. The waves lapped gently against the shore, and the sun sparkled on the water like 1,000 tiny diamonds. Max stepped onto the sand, his paws sinking slightly, and looked around with curious eyes. Hope ran ahead, laughing as the waves tickled her feet. Max followed at a slower pace, his tail wagging as he sniffed the salty air. Elena spread out a blanket and sat down, watching her daughter and her dog play in the surf. As the day went on, Max seemed to find a second wind. He chased after Hope, his movements careful but joyful. A small group of children nearby noticed them and asked if they could play with Max. Elena smiled and nodded, watching as Max became the center of their games. One of the children, a boy named Liam, asked Elena about Max's story. Elena shared a brief version, and Liam's eyes widened with wonder. "He's like a superhero," Liam said, petting Max gently. "You're so lucky to have him." Elena nodded, her heart full. "I am," she said. "We all are." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Elena gathered their things. Hope was reluctant to leave, but Elena promised they'd come back soon. Max walked beside them, his steps slower but steady, as they made their way back to the car. That night, as Elena tucked Hope into bed, Hope looked up at her with sleepy eyes. "Max is my best friend, Mommy," she said. "He makes everything better." Elena kissed her forehead, her heart swelling with love. "He's our best friend," she said. "And we're so lucky to have him." As the weeks went by, Elena continued to find ways to celebrate Max's impact on their lives. She started a social media account dedicated to sharing his story, posting photos and updates about their adventures. The account quickly gained followers, with people from around the world expressing their admiration for Max. One day, Elena received a message from a woman named Sarah, who ran a rescue organization in another state. "Max's story is so inspiring," Sarah wrote. "Would you consider partnering with us for an event to raise awareness about rescue animals?" Elena was thrilled by the idea. She and Sarah worked together to plan a virtual event called Rescue Heroes, where people could share their own stories of how rescue animals had changed their lives. The event was a resounding success, bringing together a community of people united by their love for animals. Max became a symbol of hope for so many. People sent letters and messages, sharing how his story had inspired them to adopt pets, volunteer at shelters, or simply look at life with a more hopeful perspective. Elena read each message to Max, who wagged his tail as if he understood the impact he was making. One letter, in particular, stood out. It was from a young girl named Mia, who was recovering from a serious illness. "Max's story gave me strength when I felt like giving up," she wrote. "Thank you for sharing him with the world." Elena felt tears prick her eyes as she read the letter aloud to Max. "You're a miracle, Max," she said, stroking his fur. "You've changed so many lives, including ours." As Max grew older, Elena focused on making every moment special. She organized small outings, spent quiet evenings at home, and ensured Max received all the love and care he deserved. Hope took on a more active role in caring for Max, often sitting beside him and telling him stories. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Hope turned to Elena. "Do you think Max knows how much we love him?" she asked. Elena smiled, her heart full of emotion. "I think he knows," she said. "Max feels our love every day." As the seasons changed, so did their lives. Elena's work at the nonprofit flourished, and Hope continued to grow into a kind and compassionate child. Max remained their anchor, his presence a constant reminder of the power of love and resilience. One crisp autumn morning, Elena woke up to find Max lying peacefully in his bed. His breathing was slow and steady, and his eyes opened slightly as she approached. She knelt down beside him, her heart heavy with a mix of love and sadness. "You've given us everything, Max," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You've been our protector, our friend, our family." Max looked at her, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. He licked her hand gently, his way of saying that he knew. That day, Elena and Hope spent every moment with Max, showering him with love and gratitude. They took him to the park one last time, where he sat under a tree, watching the world go by. Hope fed him his favorite treats, her small hands gentle and loving. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the park, Max rested his head on Elena's lap. His breathing grew slower, his body relaxing into a deep peace. Elena held him close, her tears falling freely as she whispered words of love and thanks. When Max took his final breath, the world seemed to pause. Elena and Hope sat together, holding him and each other, their hearts heavy with grief but full of gratitude. In the days that followed, the community rallied around them, offering support and sharing memories of Max. A memorial was held in his honor, where people shared stories of how he had touched their lives. Elena felt a deep sense of pride and love as she listened, knowing that Max's legacy would live on. Hope drew a final picture of Max, surrounded by hearts and stars, and placed it in a frame. "He's our guardian angel now," she said softly. Elena nodded, her heart aching but comforted by the thought. Life moved forward, as it always does, but Max's presence remained. His collar hung by the door, a reminder of the journey they had shared. Elena continued her work at the nonprofit, inspired by Max's spirit, and Hope grew into a compassionate young girl who carried Max's lessons in her heart. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars, Hope pointed to a bright one twinkling in the sky. "That's Max," she said with certainty. "He's watching over us." Elena smiled, her heart full of love. "Yes, he is," she said. "And he always will be."